Tonight he smiled like he'd already won. Like the courthouse lights were just stage bulbs, and I was the extra who forgot her lines. My ex-husband, Derek Maddox, sat across the mediation table with that calm, corporate patience he used to save for quarterly reports. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He just slid a settlement packet toward me and tapped the signature line with one neat finger. "Take it," he said softly. "You'll be fine." The air smelled like stale coffee and copier toner. My hands were cold around a paper cup. I looked at the numbers, the house value, the retirement accounts, the agreed debt. And something in my chest went tight, because none of it matched what I'd lived through. The last 2 years weren't fine. They were a slow drain. Grocery trips charged to my card while Derek handled the finances. Late-night calls he took in the garage. And the way he started locking his laptop like a teenager guarding a diary. And yet here he was, acting like the divorce was just a formality. Like our life together could be itemized, capped, and closed. I forced my voice steady. "You're sure this is everything?" Derek's mouth curved barely. "This is what exists." That was the moment, the exact moment, my phone buzzed in my purse. One vibration, then another. I didn't check it right away. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of watching me flinch. But my attorney, Marissa Klein, leaned in and whispered, "You should look." So I did. It was a text from my friend Talia, who worked in corporate filings at a downtown law office. 2 words first, like she was afraid the rest would explode my screen. Found it. Then the screenshot loaded. A state business registry page. A company name in bold. A filing date from 19 months ago. Registered agent. A P.O. box in Bellevue. And the organizer name. Derek Maddox. The company name hit me like a slap. Maddox Ridge Holdings, LLC. I stared so hard the letters blurred. My mind tried to reject it, like it was a typo. Like it was someone else's Derek Maddox. But the address line underneath was too familiar. It was our old rental duplex address. The duplex Derek told me we sold years ago. Marissa's gaze flicked to my face. "What is it?" I slid the phone to her. She scanned once, then again. Slower this time. Her expression changed in stages. First curiosity, then calculation. Then something colder. "Okay," she said, calm as a surgeon. "Don't react, not yet." Across the table, Derek noticed the shift anyway. His eyes narrowed. "Is there a problem?" I swallowed. I could taste metal. "No," I lied. "Just work." He smiled again. But this time it wasn't the smile of a man who'd already won. It was the smile of a man who was listening for the sound of a floorboard breaking beneath him and pretending he couldn't hear it. Because here was the legal truth Derek had gambled on. The anchor that would decide everything within the first minute of my fight back. In a divorce, you don't get to hide assets. You don't get to pretend a company doesn't exist. You don't get to shuffle marital money into a neat little box labeled business and call it untouchable. If you do, and you get caught, the court can punish you. The court can sanction you. The court can reopen settlements. The court can award attorney fees. And in many places, if a judge believes you tried to cheat the process, the judge can shift the division against you. Derek had built his whole offer around one assumption, that I would never find the box. But the box was real, and it was already shaking in my hands. When we left mediation, I didn't scream. I didn't cry in the elevator. I waited until the glass doors closed behind us. Then I turned to Marissa. "Tell me what this means," I said, and my voice came out too quiet. The kind of quiet that scares people. Marissa nodded once. It means we pause settlement. It means we go to discovery. It means we ask the court for updated disclosures. And we do it fast. I thought about the duplex, about the rent checks Derek used to bring home in cash, joking that it was easy money. I thought about the year he said we'd sold it to pay off debt. I remembered signing something at the kitchen table, a stack of papers he'd slid toward me while our daughter Maisie colored unicorns beside my elbow. I had signed without reading, because it was my husband, because we had a life, because trusting him felt like breathing. Now in the winter light outside the courthouse, trust felt like a bruise. 2 days later, we filed a motion to compel updated financial disclosures and a request for production tied to any business entities Derek had formed, managed, or benefited from. We asked for bank statements, credit card statements, loan applications, tax returns, QuickBooks files, lease agreements, everything. We demanded a list of all entities where he was an owner, member, manager, or signatory. Derek's attorney responded with outrage, like we'd accused Derek of stealing oxygen. They insisted the LLC was inactive. They claimed it held no material value. They pushed for another mediation date to avoid unnecessary conflict. Marissa read the email aloud and snorted. Inactive companies don't need registered agents and annual reports, she said, and they don't usually share addresses with properties you conveniently sold. That same week, a white envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written in blocky handwriting, like someone was trying not to be recognized. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a photocopy of a cashier's check, payable to Maddox Ridge Holdings, LLC, for $48,000. Memo line, consulting. My stomach flipped. It wasn't just a company. It was a pipeline. I called Talia, hands shaking. Where did you get the registry screenshot? Talia exhaled. I wasn't even looking for him, she said. A client asked me to check an address, that duplex address. I ran it, and his LLC popped up. Then I dug. He's filed amendments. He's active. Do you know what it does? Not exactly, she admitted, but I saw something else. A UCC filing, a lender, and a bank name. A lender meant debt or leverage. Leverage meant something was being bought or hidden. That night, after Maisie fell asleep, I opened the old folder in my desk where I'd shoved all the marriage paperwork I couldn't bear to look at anymore. Mortgage statements, insurance letters, tax returns, receipts that smelled faintly like cardboard and old fights. And there it was, an email printout from 2 years ago. Subject line, congratulations on your approval. It was from a small business bank. It referenced a business account for Maddox Ridge Holdings, LLC. My name wasn't on it, but our home address was, and the phone number listed was mine. He'd used me as a contact, like a spare key. The next escalation came fast, faster than I expected. Marissa scheduled Derek's deposition. His attorney tried to delay. Marissa pushed. The judge set a date anyway. On the morning of the deposition, Derek walked into the conference room wearing the same tailored navy suit he'd worn on our 10th anniversary dinner, back when he'd still bothered to pretend he was proud to be my husband. He glanced at me like I was a stranger in the wrong seat. We swore him in. We started simple. Mr. Maddox, Marissa said, have you ever formed a limited liability company during the marriage? Derek didn't blink. I have formed a company, yes. And what is the name of that company? Maddox Ridge Holdings. Is that company currently active? It exists, Derek said carefully. It's mostly administrative. Does it hold assets? No, he said, too quick. Marissa didn't argue. She just slid the photocopy of the cashier's check across the table. Then what is this? She asked. Derek's jaw tightened. That's a payment for work I did. Consulting, Marissa read aloud. Paid to the LLC, $48,000. Who paid you? Derek's eyes flicked to his attorney. The attorney cleared his throat. Objection? Relevance? Marissa smiled, polite and deadly. It's relevant because marital income belongs in the marital estate, and because the settlement proposal you offered assumes your income is what you claimed on your disclosures. Derek's lips pressed into a thin line. A contractor paid me, he said. I advised on real estate. Did you advise on the duplex at... She named the address. That you told the court was sold? Derek's nostrils flared. The property was sold. To whom? A buyer, he snapped. Marissa's pen paused. Name. Derek hesitated, just half a second. But it was enough. I don't recall, he said. Marissa nodded slowly. You don't recall who bought a property you claim you sold? A property you reported as part of the marital estate? A property whose address is now linked to your LLC. His attorney stacked objections like sandbags. Marissa let him. Then she reached into her folder and placed one more document on the table. A county recorder printout. A deed transfer. Grantor, Derek Maddox and Claire Maddox. My married name. Grantee, Maddox Ridge Holdings, LLC. Recorded 11 days after the date. Derek told me the duplex was sold. The room went silent. I felt the blood leave my face, because there it was. My signature, on a deed, a signature I didn't remember signing. Marissa's voice softened, not for Derek, but for the record. Mrs. Maddox, do you recognize this signature? I stared at the looping letters, and my throat tightened. It looks like mine, I whispered. Derek's smile flickered, not gone, just thinner. Marissa turned back to him. Did your wife sign this deed in your presence? Derek's eyes sharpened. Yes. In what room? Our kitchen. What day? He hesitated again. A Tuesday, he said, grasping. Marissa's pen scratched. And did you explain to her that she was transferring ownership to your newly formed company? Derek leaned back. She knew what she was signing. Something inside me snapped, not into rage, but into clarity. He was lying, and he was so comfortable lying, it was like watching a man breathe. Because I remembered that kitchen table. I remembered Maisie's unicorns. I remembered Derek telling me, it's just for refinancing. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. Except everything. When the deposition ended, Derek stood, buttoned his jacket, and leaned down, as if he were about to whisper something intimate. The way he used to whisper, back when he still belonged to me. But his words were ice. Stop digging, he murmured. You won't like what you find. Then he walked out. The next 3 weeks were a chain reaction. Marissa issued subpoenas to banks. We hired a forensic accountant named Lionel Cho, a quiet man with soft eyes and the ruthless patience of someone who lives inside spreadsheets. We pulled credit reports. We requested business tax filings. We demanded communications with property managers, title companies, and lenders. And every time we got one answer, it opened 2 more doors. Door 1. Maddox Ridge Holdings wasn't inactive. It had an operating agreement. It had a business account with steady deposits. It had outgoing wires labeled equipment, management fee, and capital contribution. Door 2. The LLC owned more than the duplex. It owned a second property, a small lake cabin in eastern Washington I'd never heard of. It had purchased that cabin 6 months after Derek told me we couldn't afford a vacation. Door 3. The LLC had a line of credit secured by our marital home. That was the moment the fear finally hit. Not emotional fear, practical fear. Because if Derek had used our home as collateral, without my knowledge, he wasn't just hiding assets. He was risking the roof over our child's head. I sat in Lionel's office as he laid out the timeline. Bank statements across the desk, highlighted deposits, transfer arrows, a story told in numbers. "See this?" Lionel said, tapping a series of payments. "These are monthly, same amount, same day, from a property management company. Rent." I swallowed. "From the duplex." "Yes," Lionel said. "And this," he tapped another stream, "is rental income from the cabin. Short-term rentals." My mouth went dry. So he had 2 streams of income he never disclosed. Lionel nodded. "And this is where it gets interesting." He slid another page toward me. A wire transfer out of the LLC account to a title company. Amount, $312,000. Date, 8 days before Derek moved out of our home. "What is that?" I asked. Lionel's eyes lifted. "A purchase, something big." Marissa leaned in. "Can we trace it?" Lionel gave a small, grim smile. "Already did." He flipped to county records. A commercial unit, a strip mall office space, bought by Maddox Ridge Holdings, LLC, leased back to a business with a familiar name. Maddox Wellness Group. I blinked. "That's the clinic Derek said he consulted for." Marissa's voice sharpened. "Or the clinic he controls." My heart pounded, because Derek had always framed himself as an employee, a hired mind, a guy who helped clients. But this looked like ownership. This looked like a man building an empire behind my back, using marital money as the foundation. Escalation wasn't loud. It was relentless. It was paperwork arriving like waves. A subpoena response from the business bank showed Derek was the sole signatory on the LLC account. A title company response showed the down payment came from our joint savings. The savings I'd watched shrink while Derek told me taxes are higher this year. A credit report showed an inquiry I didn't recognize. A loan number tied to the home. A lender email addressed to Derek, but sent to our shared printer years ago, when he assumed I'd never look. Then Lionel circled one set of pages with a red pen and slid them to Marissa. The home line of credit documents had my signature on them, but it wasn't mine. My name was there, yes, but the rhythm was wrong, the slant was wrong, and the notary stamp belonged to a commission that had expired before the document date. My skin prickled, because that wasn't clever accounting. That was a forged signature tied to my home. Marissa filed an emergency motion. She requested a temporary restraining order to prevent Derek from selling, transferring, or encumbering any assets, including LLC property, pending final distribution. She requested an order for Derek to produce the LLC's full books and records. She requested attorney fees. The court set a hearing. Derek's side called it overreach. They said the LLC was separate property. They said the cabin was a business investment. They said the home line of credit was approved and proper. The hearing took place in a small courtroom with wood paneling that smelled like old varnish. Derek sat at the opposite table, jaw tight, hands folded like he was praying. But I could see the tell now. The subtle twitch in his cheek when he was cornered. The judge, Honorable Rita Alvarez, looked through the filings with the patience of someone who'd seen every excuse a person could invent, and was tired of all of them. "Mr. Maddox," she said, "you formed an LLC during the marriage." "Yes, Your Honor." "You transferred a marital property into it. I believed it was appropriate. You obtained a line of credit secured by the marital home." Derek's attorney stood. "Your Honor, the line of credit was—" Judge Alvarez lifted a hand. "Counsel, I'm asking your client." Derek's throat bobbed. It was for business operations. Judge Alvarez's gaze cut. "With your wife's consent?" Derek hesitated, longer this time. "No," he admitted. A murmur moved through the courtroom like a gust. Judge Alvarez leaned forward. "And how did her signature appear on the documents?" Derek's attorney spoke quickly. The judge cut him off again. Derek's eyes flicked to me, and for the first time in months, I saw something real in them. Not love, not regret, fear. I believed she understood," he said. Judge Alvarez stared at him for a beat, then looked down at the expired notary stamp and the shaky signature. "Mr. Maddox," she said slowly, "if the court finds you have submitted falsified documents, the consequences can be severe." Derek swallowed hard. The judge granted the restraining order. She ordered Derek to produce full LLC records within 10 days. She set a compliance review date, and then she looked at him over her glasses and said, "I suggest you take this seriously." Outside the courthouse, Derek walked past me without a word, but when his shoulder brushed mine in the hallway, he leaned in just enough that only I could hear him. "You think you're smart," he whispered, "but you don't know who you're fighting." I didn't answer, because I did know. I was fighting the man I'd married, the man who'd smiled at me across a candlelit table and promised he'd never hurt me. I was fighting the man who'd learned how to turn love into leverage. And now, I was fighting for my daughter's safety. 10 days later, Derek produced the records. Or rather, he produced a version of them, half missing. Statements with pages cut off, invoices with blurred vendor names, a QuickBooks export that didn't match the bank totals. Lionel reviewed them and shook his head. "This is curated," he said. "He's giving you a story, not the truth." Marissa filed a motion for sanctions. She demanded unredacted records. She demanded login credentials for the accounting software. She requested that the court infer hidden assets based on noncompliance. That's when Derek made his next move. I got a call from my mortgage servicer. A polite woman with a headset voice said, "Mrs. Maddox, we're calling regarding a delinquency on your home equity line account." My heart dropped. "I don't have a home equity line," I said. There was a pause. "Our records show a line on the property," she said. "Payment is 30 days past due." I felt the room tilt. "What happens if it isn't paid?" "It could proceed to collections," she said. "Potentially foreclosure actions, depending on the status." Maisie was in the next room, watching cartoons, laughing at something bright and harmless. I stared at the wall and tried to breathe. When I hung up, my hands were shaking so hard I couldn't type. Marissa came to my house that afternoon. She didn't take off her coat. She listened to the voicemail replay, then looked at me with a steadiness I clung to like a railing. "We're going back to court," she said. "Today." We filed an emergency motion. We asked the judge to order Derek to bring the line current immediately and to prohibit him from further actions that endangered the marital home. We asked for the lender to freeze changes pending litigation. We attached the delinquency notice. Judge Alvarez set an emergency hearing within 48 hours. Derek arrived looking exhausted, not remorseful, exhausted like a man whose secrets were finally heavy. He claimed the delinquency was an administrative mistake. He claimed he'd forgotten a payment. He claimed it would be fixed. Judge Alvarez's eyes were sharp. "You forgot," she said, "a debt secured by the marital residence that your wife denies authorizing." She issued a direct order. He would bring the account current within 24 hours and provide proof. He would not, under any circumstances, take actions that put the marital residence at risk. Derek nodded, jaw clenched. For the first time, his arrogance looked like panic now dressed up as control. 2 days after that emergency hearing, Derek sent me an email with the subject line, "For Maisie." No greeting, no apology, just a list of pickup times and holidays typed like a corporate policy memo. At the bottom, he added one sentence that made my stomach clench. "If you keep escalating litigation, I will seek primary custody for stability." Marissa read it and went still. "He's trying to scare you into backing off," she said. "He wants you thinking about school nights instead of bank wires." But Maisie's life didn't pause just because my marriage collapsed. There were lunches to pack, permission slips to sign, and the way she'd started asking, "Is Daddy mad at you?" in the careful voice kids use when they're testing how fragile the world is. I didn't tell her the details. I told her the truth she could hold. "Grown-ups sometimes disagree," I said, "but you are safe. Always." Lionel asked me for every account I could still access. Old email threads, the credit monitoring profile Derek had once insisted we didn't need. Late one night, I found an email Derek had forwarded to himself by mistake. It was from a payroll service. Subject: Owner draw schedule confirmed. Not salary, owner draw. The attachment listed monthly transfers from Maddox Ridge Holdings to Derek's personal account, labeled draw, like he'd been paying himself the whole time. Marissa added it to the sanctions motion and told Lionel, "Trace every draw." Lionel traced and found a pattern. Draws, then repeated cash withdrawals, then deposits into a different bank Derek had never listed. We subpoenaed it. While we waited, Derek tried a new tactic. He showed up at my porch unannounced, voice gentle. "You're making this worse than it has to be," he said. "You forged my name," I answered. He barely blinked. It was paperwork. It was faster. Faster. Like that word could erase consent. He leaned closer. "You wouldn't have understood the business side. You would have panicked. So I handled it." There it was. The same old script. "You're emotional. I'm practical. You're lucky I'm here." I stepped back, closed the door, and called Marissa. She filed to limit contact to written communication about Maisie and logistics. Derek's reaction was immediate. A furious email. Then silence. When the subpoena response arrived from the second bank, Lionel opened the statements and exhaled. "This is the vault," he said. The account wasn't in Derek's name. It was in the name of another LLC, one he hadn't disclosed. Same registered agent, same P.O. box. And the balance wasn't small. It was 6 figures. Marissa looked at me and said, "This is why he wanted you to sign." So we walked into court with the statements, the owner draw schedule, and the custody threat email. Judge Alvarez read the custody line, then looked up at Derek. "Using a child as leverage in financial concealment litigation," she said, "is inappropriate." She expanded the restraining order to cover newly discovered entities and prohibited transfers outside ordinary expenses without notice. She warned Derek that continued concealment could mean contempt and adverse inferences. Walking out, I felt lighter. Not because it was over, but because the court had finally drawn a bright line Derek couldn't talk his way around. I wasn't begging for fairness anymore. I was documenting truth. That week, Derek's lawyer emailed a revised offer. More cash, fewer questions, a deadline printed in bold. Marissa didn't even forward it to me at first. She called. "They're buying time," she said. "Time to move money, refinance, or rewrite records." I started keeping a notebook on the counter. Dates, calls, account numbers, the names of every person who said, "I'm just following procedure." At Maisie's school pickup, I watched other parents laugh and trade gossip, and I felt like I was living in two worlds at once. One normal, one made of liens and lies. Every night after bedtime stories, I scanned one more document and reminded myself that paper doesn't get tired, people do. So I stopped getting tired. I let the paperwork carry the weight until the truth had nowhere left to hide anymore. The escalation kept coming. Marissa subpoenaed communications with the registered agent. Lionel traced small transfers that looked like reimbursements, but hit personal accounts. We found a new credit card opened under Derek's name, paid from the LLC. We found a lease where Derek's consulting office was actually the commercial unit he owned. And then Lionel found the twist that turned the entire case sideways, the one that landed when you think you've already seen the worst, and then the truth takes off its mask. He found a lawsuit, a civil complaint filed by a former business partner against Maddox Ridge Holdings, LLC, and against Derek personally. The complaint alleged that Derek had used the LLC to purchase the strip mall unit, then siphoned rent payments into another entity controlled by his brother. It alleged breach of fiduciary duty, fraudulent transfer, and it named my marital home as collateral in a guarantee Derek had signed. My breath caught. I read the complaint twice, then a third time. The words stayed the same. If Derek lost that lawsuit, someone could come after assets tied to that guarantee structure. The secret LLC wasn't just hiding money. It was hiding risk, a bomb under my house. Marissa's face was pale as she read. "We need to put the court on notice," she said. "We need to bring the LLC and related entities under this court's control, and we need to freeze transfers before he moves everything." That night, I didn't sleep. I watched Maisie breathe in her bed, hair fanned on the pillow, and my chest ached with a kind of love that feels like pain. I thought about how close I'd come to signing that mediation packet, how close I'd come to walking away with fine, while Derek walked away with a company full of cash and a house full of hidden debt. In the morning, Marissa filed a motion to join necessary parties, to bring the LLC under the divorce court's jurisdiction. She argued the LLC was created during the marriage with marital funds, that assets were transferred into it, and that it should be considered in equitable distribution. She attached the civil complaint as evidence of undisclosed liabilities. Derek's attorney responded with fury. They called it improper. They called it tactical. Judge Alvarez didn't care about their adjectives. She cared about facts. The next hearing was bigger, a real courtroom, with rows of benches and the heavy hush of strangers listening. Derek's brother Evan appeared, smirking like he'd walked into a bar, not a courtroom. He wore a blazer that didn't fit right, and a grin that did. When he took the stand, Marissa's questions were gentle at first. "Mr. Maddox," she said, "are you a member of Maddox Ridge Holdings?" Evan shrugged. "On paper. Did you contribute capital?" Evan laughed. "No." "Did you receive distributions?" Evan's laugh faded. He glanced at Derek. Derek stared straight ahead, Like if he didn't look at the mess, it might stop being real. I mean, sometimes, Evan said. Marissa slid a bank statement toward him. Sometimes like this? She asked, pointing at a transfer labeled distribution for $22,500. Evan's eyes darted. He tried to shrug again, but it looked stiff now. I don't know, he said. That could be anything. Marissa nodded. It could be, but it's labeled distribution, and it was deposited into an account in your name. Evan swallowed. His grin was gone. Then Marissa asked, Do you know why your brother formed Maddox Ridge Holdings? Evan smirked reflexively. Tax reasons. Tax reasons, Marissa echoed. Did he ever tell you he was doing it so his wife wouldn't see the income? Evan flinched. He looked at Derek. Derek's eyes finally met his. Not with warmth, but with a warning. Evan's voice went smaller. He said divorces get messy. Judge Alvarez's eyes sharpened. Answer, she said. Marissa's tone stayed steady. Did he ever say the words, Claire will never find this? Evan's shoulders slumped. Yes, he admitted. He said she'd never find it. I felt something hot behind my eyes. Not tears, exactly. Vindication and grief. Because hearing my name inside Derek's plan made the betrayal feel official. After the hearing, in the hallway, Derek grabbed my elbow. Not hard enough to bruise. Hard enough to remind me he still thought he had access. You're ruining everything, he hissed. I pulled my arm free. You did that, I said. He leaned closer, eyes wild. If this comes out, I'm finished. Then you should have told the truth, I said. He laughed sharp. Truth? You wanted comfort, Claire. You wanted the house, the school district. Truth would have cost you that. My stomach turned, because it was a lie. But it was a lie with a hook. Because yes, I'd wanted safety, and he'd used that desire like a handle. I walked away. The final escalation arrived in a fat envelope from a title company. Lionel traced the commercial lease payments and found the mechanism Derek used to keep everything flexible. Maddox Wellness Group wasn't just a tenant. Its filings tied back to the same control structure. Rent paid to Derek, by Derek, to create income he could shift, inflate, or bury, while building equity inside the LLC. Marissa laid it out at the evidentiary hearing. She didn't shout, she didn't perform. She just stacked exhibits like bricks, bank account flows, property deeds, the forged signature analysis, the civil complaint, the lease loop, the missing records, the delinquency notice, the text from Evan's deposition transcript, and like a quiet final nail, an email Derek had sent to the property manager. Keep this off Claire's radar. Derek's attorney objected. The judge overruled. Again and again. Until objections sounded like rain on a roof that wasn't leaking anymore. When Judge Alvarez returned from recess, her voice was calm and final. She found Derek failed to disclose material assets and income. She found credible evidence that documents bearing my signature were not executed with my informed consent. She found the LLC, formed during the marriage and funded by marital resources, belonged in the marital estate for division. She found Derek's conduct warranted sanctions. Then she shifted the balance. Hard. She awarded me the marital home free and clear of Derek's interest, with protective deadlines and enforcement. She made Derek solely responsible for the home equity line and any guarantees tied to the LLC, and barred him from using the home as collateral again. She awarded me 65% of the net value of Maddox Ridge Holdings and its related properties, including the duplex and the cabin, based on concealment and waste. She ordered Derek to pay my attorney fees and forensic costs. She referred the questionable notarization and signature issues for review through proper channels. Derek's shoulders sank like someone had cut the strings holding him upright. Evan stared at the floor, and Derek looked at me like he'd finally realized I wasn't the person he could manage with a smile. The power reversal wasn't cinematic. No music, no applause. Just paper sliding into place, like a lock clicking shut. Outside the courthouse, Derek tried one last time. He caught up to me on the steps, voice low. "Claire," he said, and for a second he sounded almost human. "We can fix this." I looked at him, at the man who'd forged my name, at the man who'd gambled our home, at the man who'd built a secret company behind my back, and thought I'd be too tired to fight. "No," I said, "you can't fix what you did, but I can protect what's mine." He flinched, maybe at the word mine, maybe at the realization that mine included Maisie, included my future, included the peace he'd tried to steal. When I got home, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd once signed papers without reading. The sunlight came through the window in a warm square. Maisie sat across from me, drawing again. This time a house with a big door and a tiny heart over it. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I'm making sure," I said, voice soft, "that our home stays ours." She nodded like that made perfect sense, because kids understand safety in the simplest language. That night, I opened a new folder. Not the old one filled with his documents. A new one. Mortgage refinance steps. Court orders. A note from Marissa with a single sentence highlighted. "You were never powerless. You were just uninformed." I thought about the secret LLC, how it had started as a shadow, and how, in the end, it became the very thing that exposed him. His confidence had been his mistake. His paper trail had been his confession. And as I turned off the lights, I felt something in my chest loosen for the first time in months. Not joy, not yet, but relief. The quiet kind. The kind that means the door is locked and the keys are in my hand. And the night, finally, belongs to me.